moment I remember is walking to shul, walking to synagogue. It was about a mile from our house to the synagogue, and you're not meant to drive on a Friday night or Saturday. So we used to walk to the shul, and I remember holding my dad's hand and walking to shul, and then men and women sat separately. So I would sit with my mum in the back, and they would, and my dad would be over on the side. And then there's a big, it's called a bimmer, it's a big platformy thing in the middle of the synagogue, and sometimes all the different men would be up there talking in Hebrew. I wouldn't understand a word of it. And as a little kid, you could run through. I remember running, although the women are meant to be on one side and the men are the other, as a little kid you can run from one to the other. So I remember going with my dad and coming back to my mum. I was born in 1954, and I lived in Preston all my life till I left home when I was just before my 18th birthday, when I went to London. And I went to Woodlands School, and then I went to Queen Mary School in Lytham. And my dad really wanted me to go to Lytham, where there'd be some other Jewish children, because at Woodlands, I can't remember, maybe there were two Jewish children at Woodlands, me and Anne Shohet, and then I wanted to go to the Park School because it was just across the road from my house, but my dad wanted me to go to St Anne's where I'd meet other Jewish children, which I did, and there were 3 or 4 of us in the class at Queen Mary's, as opposed to I would have been the only one in Preston. So as I was growing up, there were, let me think, I only remember Anne Shohet as being my age of Jewish children in Preston, exactly my age. My sister was 5 years older, and there were a few more kids her age. Oh, there was Michael Fine, there was the Silverman twins. Carol Silverman was a bit older. She lives in Israel now. Her dad lives in Manchester. The whole of the Preston community has pretty much moved away now. When I was growing up, there were, I don't know, maybe 20 families, and they kept the synagogue going. I didn't know much about it. That was just how it was. So my life was we would walk to shul on a Friday night. We'd light the candles on a Friday night when we got home. There was a lot of stuff about food in Judaism, so that was really the main thing for me, knowing that I was Jewish, was that you didn't eat milk and meat together, and we didn't eat pork, and we didn't eat bacon, and we didn't eat shellfish. But I wouldn't be aware of not eating pork and bacon and shellfish because it just wasn't there, whereas what I was aware of is that we didn't have milk and meat on the same table, and that was always something that was quite important. And also my mum got kosher meat from a kosher butcher who would deliver it from Manchester every week, and I think sometimes she had to do special things to the meat, like you have to soak it in salt water to kosher it as well, because that's one of the things we did. Also, I remember Passover, Pesach, that we call it, which is once a year you have to eat matzah instead of bread, and all the crockery gets changed and everything gets cleaned out, and you eat different food. And I remember I like it now when I organise it myself, but then it was imposed on me, and I remember hating taking matzahs to school because matzah jam sandwiches to school, it's crackers sort of thing, and they crack and they're really difficult to eat, and I remember the crumbs going all over me and it being really messy. What else do I remember about being Jewish as a kid? Let me think. Being Jewish as a kid, what was it like?
Any celebrations within the synagogue itself?
Oh yeah, my sister. I remember once we in the Preston synagogue there used to be a little cheder there, a little set of Hebrew classes, and I went when I was very little to that one because there were more kids of my sister's age. And I remember we did a Purim play, and Lynn was Queen Esther, and David Fine was King Ahasuerus, and I was the page. And I remember Lynn had this big speaking part. It was really quite important. It was quite exciting. So I must have been about 4, and she would have been about 9. So at 9, she was the star. So yeah, that was nice. And I remember we used to play in the synagogue gardens. I think it's now been bought by a different faith community. But it was our building, and I felt very at home there, and we had Hebrew classes. And then when I was about 6, I think we started having Hebrew classes in Southport, so we would all go in a minibus to Southport. And I think, so I learnt to read Hebrew when I was 7, 8, 9, and I think I had no idea what was going on at all. I didn't know why I was learning Hebrew. I just went. I didn't like it. I think I won the attendance prize because I always had to go. And I hate to say this now, but I hated it. I didn't like it at all. And now I'm the secretary of Lancaster and Lakes Jewish Community. I'm doing a job in Scotland involving the Jewish community. I'm working for the Scottish Council of Jewish Communities, talking to Jewish people all over Scotland. So I had a good foundation. It's just that I didn't know I was having a good foundation. And I've gone back and I'm actually learning Hebrew at Glasgow University now in evening classes because, and I even did a PhD about Scottish Jewish identity. So I'm really, really interested in it all now. And then it was just something that I did that was just a very small part of my life, really. Before I left home, the 1972 Guild, it was about 10 days before my 18th birthday, which was really frustrating because I was quite small, so there was no way I could have got into a pub. And all the pubs were open all day and all night, and it was lovely. Now, I remember the Guild being absolutely special when I was 17. I went to everything. It would have been a good time in my life. The very last summer, I was free and I was off to college in London, and I just had a fantastic time. I went to everything. I remember the school's pageant in the park. It was pouring with rain. I remember going to that. I remember all the processions. But then we had whip processions that went past our house. My dad was a doctor and we had a surgery on Garstang Road. And I remember the whip processions going past every year. We used to watch them either from the garden or from the top window. And so the Guild was like that times 100. It was such an exciting procession. Because I went to school in St Anne's, I wasn't part of it, and that was a bit frustrating because I always wanted to be. I wanted to go to the park school and I wanted to be part of local life. I do remember one thing that was significant, which was I used to make friends. I used to go to the Harris Library for the reading clubs and the book clubs for kids, and there was also a mouse club we had in the Harris Library, and we used to take our small animals in. So I had a guinea pig and a mouse, and I had a friend called Alita Porter who lived in Ashton, and I was at her house once, and we were eating spam, and I didn't know that spam was ham, and I remember my dad coming and dragging me out of there for eating the wrong food, and I didn't know, because, like I said, we didn't eat.
Yeah.
At home, we didn't eat food we weren't meant to eat, so I wasn't really aware of what it was or what it wasn't. It was funny.